happened?
Well, you weren't even looking at me anymore. You were making it all about yourself. Because I got this sneaking suspicion that we're not giving the people what they want.
It's okay, baby. Let's give the people what they want.
Psych!
In Joker 2, Arthur Fleck returns to a sequel story like no other. He goes to sit in court accused of murder. He gets to bang a hot fangirl. He gets gang-banged by hot prison guards. And then he stops being Joker and dies. That's it. That's all, folks. Thanks for coming. And I guess it's already known that the movie ended up being a massive disaster. It became the worst rated comic book movie in history and lost a fortune thanks to its insanely high blockbuster budget. Madam Web, perhaps I treated you too harshly.
Are you okay?
And as always, there are obvious reasons for this. Taking a movie of a specific genre and turning it into a whole other genre, not a great idea. Taking a relatable loner character living in a society and turning him into an unrelatable Chad, not a great idea. I mean, goddamn, even Joker has a girlfriend now.
How did you do this, bro? I used to look up to you, man.
But that being said, the most central reason behind the failure of Joker Folie À Deux is that it seems to have been made purely for personal gain, at the cost of the audience. Apparently, the movie got started because the main actor saw it in a dream in which I guess he also saw himself being paid $20 million for it. And since the director liked the idea of $20 million as well, they decided to make the sequel to cash in. Which honestly isn't too surprising to see, seeing as both of these people have been revealed to be among the worst in the industry. An actor who only really cares about himself, and a director who loves the smell of his own farts so much that he made a movie that's 90% talking about his previous movie. Creating new value, writing female characters who are not paper thin, that's not really this director's thing.
We don't do that here.
But since it may seem like I'm just ranting now, I promise there's a point to this. And the point is that with every sequel, there are some aspects that you must get right or the audience will turn against it and you, regarding the hero, regarding the familiar elements, regarding the overall story. So today, let's investigate what cardinal sequel sins Joker 2 makes in those areas to learn how to avoid them. And at the end, I'll also talk about what this movie should have been, what it could have been if it weren't made just for a paycheck. Here's how to avoid backstabbing your audience and paying the price for it. Oh, and also, some of you made it clear last time that you don't like Movimento very much. I think he's way better than me because he has more energy and because he takes some of the work, but I also know it's not a good idea to go to war with the audience, unlike some others.
Why not?
So, I'm ready to listen. If you want me to do these videos, hit the like button right now. Or if you want Movimento, don't hit it. I'll decide based on the results.
Wait, don't do this, man. Come on, man. Get back inside.
The first Backstab sequel problem here is that the hero is neutered into a lesser version of himself, which is just sad and frustrating to see. As weird as it sounds, the setup for Arthur's journey is really good. Basically, he lives a hopeless, mundane life in Arkham Asylum. He doesn't make jokes, he doesn't show emotion, he has effectively given up. But when he meets a crazy fan who informs him of the impact he's made on her and the outside world, that sets him up to go on a second rise as Joker. It's a fantastic idea to see the contrast between those two phases. The issue, however, is that Arthur never really goes on a second rise. There is no up in this movie for him. In every aspect, he's a massive downgrade from before. Whereas last time he was an active protagonist with goals and aspirations to move toward, like being a comedian, now he's become a passive shell. He doesn't do things to make stuff happen. Everything happens and is done to him or for him.
I got you in.
You do that for
He already has a dedicated lawyer who wants to help him without ever having to get that help. He gets befriended by a cute fangirl without ever having to make that meeting happen. A fangirl that, by the way, is always the one doing stuff while Arthur just sits and waits.
This is the peak of his power. Until 1950.
In other words, the lead character of the movie is no longer leading the movie. Arthur is a falling leaf carried by the wind, a formerly active hero with agency who has turned passive and lost his capability of motion.
Yeah.
Which is like watching your favorite Formula 1 car that no longer has wheels. Not very fun. Whereas last time Arthur made his mark in power dynamics, like finally standing up to his bullies, now he's always the loser in every conflict. He gets bullied by the prison guards daily without ever getting back at them. He gets outwitted and outplayed by the TV interviewer looking to get a show out of him. He gets to sit in court and listen as people talk crap about him for the whole world. He gets constantly manipulated by both of the women around him.
She didn't grow up in your neighborhood. She lives on the Upper West Side with her parents.
You weren't even looking at me anymore. You were making it all about yourself.
She doesn't care about you. They're laughing at you in there.
I want to fire my lawyer.
In almost every interaction of conflict, Arthur is the one being defeated, the one conceding and giving the opposite side what they want. The only exception is when he decides to represent himself in court, and even then, it's against the tiny guy who already has PTSD from the first movie. In all other matchups, Arthur is the loser, which is like seeing your favorite boxer get knocked out in every round without ever even throwing a proper punch. Just pretty frustrating. Whereas last time Arthur showed a wide range of powerful emotions, like finally letting loose his long repressed rage, this time that emotion is basically down to zero. From beginning to end, Arthur pretty much just mopes around with a neutral expression. There are no notably strong moments of sadness or rage or glee or really anything. Aside from some inspirational, usually make-believe musical numbers, the most powerful acting performance of Arthur is when he does a funny lawyer accent.
Mr. Puddles.
Which is like realizing that your favorite actor can no longer act, or that he's phoning it in for money. Just pretty boring and disappointing.
Why are you doing this to me, Arthur?
What? Gary, I like you.
No, ma'am, we're not.
Plan on murdering me in my sleep?
What? No.
Altogether, whereas last time Arthur went on an entertaining, in some ways relatable journey of being a down-on-his-luck loner finally standing up to oppression, here he's become nothing. He's the victim, he's the mark, he's the joke. His journey is about either getting to go to a mental hospital or getting a lethal injection. He gets mocked and bullied and violated, and then he gives up and dies. Never in history has a sequel tried so hard to destroy its own protagonist, no matter how illogical it gets.
Like I said, I knew his mother a little bit. She was really sweet to my daughter. She told me that there was something wrong with Arthur, that he lived in a fantasy world and that he had this laugh.
His dumb laugh.
She made up a story when he was a kid, that he was put on this earth to bring joy, so that he would stop crying, so that he wouldn't himself. She just thought it was ridiculous that he thought he could make people laugh. I mean, she said Arthur wasn't funny at all.
Yeah, sounds like a very realistic, nice neighbor conversation. My point here is this. It's okay for heroes to be less proficient than before. It's okay for them to have new flaws and struggles and limitations. But what's not okay is that they never rise or even try to rise above those limitations to chase that previous level. It's like seeing your dog get confused with age, or seeing someone take their elder to the bank to get a loan in their name. It's just painful and depressing to look at, which is why audiences don't want to look. It's like if I suddenly abandon the part of this channel that you value. I don't cover movies anymore. I don't take lessons from them. What I do on this channel now is talk about my favorite party stories. Last night, for example, I was about to leave a party because I'm a loner who lives in a society. But then this one girl takes out this board game which was a big success on Kickstarter or something. And although I'm not into board games, I got into it and stayed thanks to its story. Basically, it was a card game set at the end of the world where you play monster-themed trade cards to score points and take points away from others before the end of the world comes. It's played through rounds called ages, which have their own rules, and among them are catastrophe cards which turn the rules upside down. And after 3 of those, the world ends and the game finishes and the player with the most points wins. You guys like that party story? You want me to tell more? No? You want me to cover Joker? Ah, okay. Well, in that case, you can check out the game yourself. It's called Doomlings, a story-themed, lightweight card game meant for 2 to 6 players that's fun and new for all. I'll get you a 20% Filmento discount with the link below and the QR code on screen. On me. Another Backstab sequel problem here is that familiar elements are used for their pre-existing value instead of being developed further to create new value. For example, one of the best ideas in the first movie was that Arthur's Joker laugh comes from a condition that activates whenever he feels anxiety, a fantastic narrative element creating situations.
What, you think that's funny?
And well, in Joker 2, that element is completely irrelevant. Like sure, Arthur does laugh and you can kinda pick up on it at certain times, but the context is no longer there. Do people know about Arthur's laughing condition?
5 horrific murders. Arthur Fleck, welcome.
Does Arthur feel pressure to make people understand that he has the condition? In this scene, is Arthur laughing negatively because he's being beat up, or is his laugh an excited continuation of the previous scene where we cut from? I don't know, it's not explored anymore, especially since now there's a doctor in court suddenly saying that Arthur isn't mentally ill. Oh sure, I guess laughing uncontrollably in negative situations is as common as the cold. As a whole, the laughing condition is no longer properly included or developed to create value. This time, Arthur just kinda laughs because I guess he still has the condition, whatever. And thus, you feel disappointed and robbed of what you had before. Another example is the location side. Last time, Arthur's journey took him to various fascinating interiors and exteriors all over Gotham City. And this time, he basically sits in 2 buildings, in Arkham Asylum and in court. As in, an open world movie has suddenly shrunk down into a mostly contained movie. And although it helps that the cinematography is still amazing, going from openness to containment is not the best idea, because almost definitely the audience ends up wishing that they could have further explored the world instead of being locked into a tinier portion of it. And also because it devalues other central elements as well, including this franchise's thematic backbone. Remember how the first movie was about rising up against the broken system and creating a movement in the process? Well, that's gone now. We don't know what's broken in Gotham City to rise up against because we're not in Gotham City. We don't know what movement there is because we're not there to explore it. Pretty much all of that now exists outside the window and in the words that people say.
I realize there's a lot going on.
Enough is enough. This idiot doesn't deserve a trial.
I must have watched that TV movie they made about you like 20 times.
They wouldn't let me watch it.
And by the way, if Joker 2 begins with a fictional movie, why wasn't it the TV movie people talk about? You could have used that to develop the world, instead of spending 4 minutes on a random cartoon metaphor.
I mean, there's the idea that Arthur's court case is being televised, which will affect the future of Gotham. Okay, but we never see a single resident of Gotham watching the court case. So then, what's the point of this, aside from making mental patients more mental and prison guards hungry for a gangbang? Oh yeah, the point is barely relevant now. The main thematic point has been reduced to a stagnant afterthought. The same problem also affects elements familiar from the source material. With Harley Quinn, for instance, I was really excited. They have an R-rated movie and a super talented actor willing to take risks. There's so much you can do with this character in this world. And yet, Harley is a waste. She's barely in the movie, and even when she is, she exists only to serve Arthur. She appears in Arkham to meet Arthur. She appears in Arthur's cell somehow to get jiggy with him. She appears in court to smile at Arthur. She wants Arthur to succeed as Joker, all while having zero substance of her own. We don't explore why she has this obsession with Arthur, or what her own life is like, or what fight she's fighting, or why. We hear her sing about impressing the people in her life,
If they could see me now, that little dusty group.
but we don't know who those people are or why she wants to impress them. She's paper thin, non-existent on her own, used purely for her pre-existing value. A crazy character who pops in out of nowhere to act crazy just for the sake of it. which is annoying as hell because her value could have amounted to so much more. In fact, Harley should have been the center of the story, but we'll get to that soon. Then again, I guess I shouldn't have expected more from a director who's never had a three-dimensional female character in any of his movies in his 30-year career. And it's the same with the rest of the source material. Arkham Asylum is where Arthur is being held, but there's nothing there to make it Arkham Asylum aside from its name. It may as well have been any random mental asylum. Harvey Dent is the DA going up against Arthur, but there's nothing there to make him Harvey Dent aside from his name. He may as well have been any random DA. As a whole, the filmmakers just throw in elements with pre-existing value and hope it's enough to make the sequel good. They took what you liked and used it to make a buck, which is very annoying to watch. The third Backstab sequel problem here is that the story isn't a new story, but rather a retrospective look back, which makes the whole thing feel like a redundant cash grab. As I mentioned, the narrative of Joker 2 is pretty straightforward. Arthur is in Arkham, he goes to court accused of murder, and then he gets violated and stops being Joker and dies. There you go, you're now all caught up with the Joker lore. And thus, since there isn't enough narrative content to build a new chapter, 90% of the screen time is spent referencing the previous chapter. Arthur is in Arkham, where people talk about what he did.
Could have been all yours if you hadn't killed 5 people. One live on national TV.
Arthur meets Harley, who talks about seeing what he did.
When I saw you and Murray Franklin, the whole time
Arthur gets interviewed about the things he did.
Did it on live TV, pal. Doesn't get any more.
Arthur goes to court, where familiar characters waffle on about what he did over and over again.
He often wrote about his fantasies. He had imaginary relationships with.
All of which is old news. We already saw what Arthur did, why he did it, as well as the consequences on others. What are you still blabbing about?
November 17th is the day that Mr. Fleck stabbed Randall Kleimenhofer to death the same day that he shot Murray Franklin.
In other words, the story of Joker 2 is that people discuss the story of Joker 1 and how it made them feel, which is not only boring and disappointing to watch, but also erases the movie's purpose of existence, because, like I mentioned, there's nowhere for this version of the story to go. Last time, the journey ended with Arthur being locked in a mental hospital, and this time, the journey is about fighting over two possible outcomes. Either Arthur loses his court case and gets the death penalty, or he wins his court case and gets put back in a mental hospital. It's death or being returned to square one. There's nothing new for Arthur to move toward. There's nothing new for the Joker movement to achieve. If this movie didn't exist, nothing of value in the Joker lore would be lost, which is why for many audiences, it still doesn't need to exist. The point is that every new chapter of a story must take the story further to create fresh narrative value. And since Arthur's story was already kinda concluded, that narrative value here needed to be found elsewhere, in Harley Quinn. Instead of Joker 2 being a retelling of Arthur's journey featuring Harley, it should have been a telling of Harley's journey featuring Arthur. Harley is the new anchoring perspective. She lives an upscale life in Gotham, going through her days dealing with her own Gotham struggles. A bit like a high-class rich girl version of Arthur's story in the first movie. But unlike with Arthur, her story is about seeing and mimicking. For whatever reason, Harley grows obsessed with Joker as a celebrity on TV after the Murray Show. So obsessed that she gets radicalized by the anti-establishment ideas that Joker represents. Her story is a 2-hour deep dive into how Arthur's actions affect the city and the different types of people in it. A whole new chapter in the Joker lore. You can still have the same broad strokes, but it would happen through Harley. There can be the court case, but through Harley's eyes. She's super invested in it. She's disgusted by the system's treatment of Arthur. She's rallying support for him. She's doing whatever she can to get close to him and help him. There can even be the death of Arthur, but through Harley's actions. All this time, Harley has based her new beliefs on what she thinks Joker is, and when she finally gets close, she realizes that there is no Joker. There is only Arthur Fleck. And since at that point she's so far gone that her own existence doesn't compute with the truth, she does the only thing she sees as logical. She kills him, she allows the movement to continue in his false image, and she keeps his baby to raise as the person she thought he was. I don't know. The point is that there's new story value. Whereas Joker 1 was about a guy going crazy, Joker 2 would be about a woman being radicalized by a pseudo-celebrity who she thinks she knows, which is very relevant today in the influencer era, and more deserving than characters simply talking about Arthur's prior actions until he's eventually killed by some random crazy guy. Altogether, when you make a sequel, ask yourself, do you want to make a new chapter with new value, or do you want to phone it in to be paid? The choice is yours, and the filmmakers of Joker 2 made theirs.